Everyone needs to have this some level of information so that, as you're giving this young person, guidance and, shepherding them through, their career, trying to get them to the next level, they're leaning on the adults in their life to hopefully give them some information. Like, look, there's social media, there's internet or whatever, but no one can really sit there and have that heart to heart conversation with you. I know that they have AI and all that stuff coming out, but to have that real human interaction and conversation, it matters. Because look, no one knows your heart more than where your place wants to go than your mom or dad or your caregiver or whoever was the guardian in your life. As you're thinking about from knowing at a young age, I want to get to the NBA, I want to get to the WNBA, I want to get to the NFL. No one knows that more. So the fact of the matter is, I think to me, having everyone in this conversation and understanding what is going to happen with this young man or woman going into this space is pretty important. And I think that having everybody to be in the conversation of the in the ecosystem is now look. Some people need it on the peripheral, and some people need it directly. But no matter what, I think everybody needs to have that conversation. We've done that with the parents at the Senior Bowl. We now have a relationship with the national football minority coaches. And again, those are coaches that we're talking to, and we know how much of an influence they have on the athletes that they're coaching. So that's important. So we do that with a number of levels of people that surround the athlete or the entertainer, and because it really is important. And that
Wow.
is important is consistent messaging too.
It's one of those wormholes you can really dive into, because
Hmm.
what you're talking about is assuming that most people in all of these athletes or entertainer circle also have a certain level of education around financing and what that looks like, investing, putting money away. How do you actually
Hmm.
save in taxes? Like, there is so much knowledge that the majority of the time, those athletes don't know. The people
Right.
around them don't know. And so when
Hmm.
they come into an enormous amount of money, most of them are coming from a spending background because that's all they ever had.
Right.
They never had the opportunity to put away money for, retirement, or they didn't have enough money. Like, they were literally living paycheck to paycheck. And usually the people that are around them have been living the same kind of lives outside of maybe coaches, right? And
Right.
so, like, the stuff that you're talking about is actually saying, hey, we need to educate the athlete, the celebrity entertainer. You have to educate everybody, because people
Hmm.
need to recognize there's only so much money that you can manage. And once you really start to manage all that extra stuff that, we see on social media and we see on the television, like, you do all that stuff, you don't have any money. And it's like, yeah, but I
Right.
have so much more money. And I'm like, but you spend so much more money because that's what you
Hmm.
have. You don't recognize that, like, you actually shouldn't spend like that. You should be spending a certain percentage. And without that guidance for the entire team's going to fail.
Exactly. And it's so interesting that you say because you say that because you have those who are the spenders, but then you have those who are the savers who are so scared that they don't want to be a statistic, they don't want to be a headline, so they just leave all their money in sitting in a checking account
Yep.
and like I'm not doing anything. I don't want to put it in the market. I don't want to do anything. And look, I understand that too. So you live in a fearful state too, and there's no place to really live when you're able to live out your dreams to live in fear
Mm,
of having this money and it's being taken away from you. So there's both sides to the equation, and I think
yep.
working on both sides and having those conversations and look, you having the mindset to understand to know where these people are coming from and knowing the place and being able to relate because there's definitely a world of relatability of being able to say, look, I understand where you're coming from, whether it's a home of a single parent home, two working parents, you're LGBTQ, there is so many things that are more than just around the money that you need to think about is how were they culturally brought up about money? What was their knowledge of money? And being able to meet them there in those conversations.
And let me tell you, every time I see these NIL deals, I just think back to the time, like, man, college would have been so different for me in
Mhm.
such a positive way. You know,
Mhm.
we as athletes, and even before me, were always taught that our education was what we were being paid to compete at the highest level, right? But when I remember days where I'd go into like the collegiate store, the bookstore, and see jerseys with numbers on them without the names, knowing dang well they were
Mhm.
selling our jerseys and we weren't getting paid, or seeing our faces on cups at the concession stands and things like that. And you walk away, and mind you, I went to Duke University, so I walked away with a Duke University like diploma. Like, I knew that was going to help me in my future, but I also struggled. Like, yes, they paid for food, but they didn't pay for gas. They didn't pay for, just the clothes that I was going to wear, things like that. Like, we were struggling athletes and we were making millions of dollars for our university. And I think that as women's, I could only imagine on the men's scale, right? And
Right.
so when the NIL deal came through, where kids were going to be able to use their name, image, and likeness and actually make money, it made me feel good that, some power was finally going to us athletes. I mean, because if you think about it, you play 4 years football, 20 years down the road, you need a hip replacement, a knee replacement. Those colleges are free. They don't have to come and help us when we've been damaged. Like, there's no, I call it, no accountability for us giving our services and saying, oh, we just gave you a college scholarship. Like, no, I'm messed up. I got CTS. Like, I've got all these things, CTE. And so, one, I'm just excited. I'm excited for them to finally claim. I do worry at the same time, because what you're talking about in terms of like a financial perspective, a lot of us aren't raised to know what to do. And this is why. So as an athlete, usually when you go through high school, it's like your parents either tell you you need a job or you have to have extracurricular activities. Most of the time, especially those who are probably going to be getting the NIL deals, have spent their life playing sports. They never had a job. They've always gotten their money from their parents,
Yep.
and that's just the way things have been. And so all of a sudden they come into, oh, you're going to get $20,000 here, you're going to get $100,000 for this, and you're just stacking up these NIL deals, and you've got all this money. Well, if you're not taught what to do, you know, those two things, right? You're either going to save it all and not do anything, or you're going to spend it all and not have anything. And so I think it's incredibly important at a young age. And I think this is also the responsibility of our universities and our colleges for our athletes, right?
Mhm.
How to show up in the media, what to say, what to stay away from. They should also be teaching us how to, consider what finances look like. And not
Yep.
just finances in the now, but like, well, this is the, money that you could be making, and this is the way you should be thinking about. This is what the future could look like. If you have
Right.
4 years of NIL deal, this is what you should be saving or investing for. Like, consider how you can, if you got $100,000 now, you got 4 years. What could you have when you finally leave college, if you don't happen to be that 1% that actually makes it to become a professional athlete? How can you
Mhm.
stretch that money so that way you feel like when you walk away, you've got a nice cushion to figure out what's next. So that's kind of my whole spiel on NIL deal. But yeah, I'm super excited for them.
Look, I'm equally excited too, Misty. And the interesting thing is, it's so much better when the conversation can come from someone like you, like who was in that seat and they can listen to. And so even when we do our financial education sessions, we'll have our global sports and entertainment directors and other advisors doing it. But the real impactful part of the session is when we can do the real talk of it and have someone like you to actually talk about, okay, I'm gonna put what they just said and put it to real life. and apply those principles of what they were saying of, the things, the do's and don'ts. I'm here to tell you these were the do's and don'ts for me, and here's how it impacted me. So I think with, the NIL space, I'm happy for them too, and it certainly is an opportunity. It's a big responsibility that we're putting on these young people to have something as big as these opportunities, and not to really help them shepherd and guide them through it. And so that's why it's important for us to continue to have those conversations and bringing people like you and having these types of conversations so they can pull on it. Look, it's nothing to say to someone like, you should save your money, you should do that. But somebody who's sitting in the seat who did it and has done it, like, look, you're trying to be in Mistie's seat. She done been there, did that. Like look, listen to what she's saying because she went through it. And like having those conversations now, look, it's for them to absorb it, take it in. But I just think it's our responsibility to make sure that we're hosting these conversations and having these conversations and having the real talk with them, so that they understand, what opportunity this great opportunity is, but what the challenges and unique, no unique circumstances that this can put you in if it's not done in a proper way. And again, like you just said, you may not get to the next level, but you have these 4 years, 4 or 5 years to, get yourself straight and get yourself there. You're on mute, Misty, but to get yourself there, um, it's a beautiful opportunity. But I do think we do have a responsibility to help them through.
Without support or recognition, I just feel like without a plan, like you're planning to fail. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, we've seen so many different cautionary tales of athletes that we're going to see it younger. And I think that's, when you see those 30 for 30s,
Yeah.
as professional athletes, what I think we need to recognize as like a sporting community is that we need to try to stop that from happening when they're younger,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
You can learn, as you mature and you grow, and you can take all those experiences you've had throughout the years and be like, all right, I messed up, but there's life after, right? But when you are so young and impressionable and you're, 18, 19, 20, and I mean, that can really do some detrimental things to your confidence, to your
Right.
mental capacity, your health and wellness, on feeling that brunt of failure at such a young age is, I think, a lot more impactful than it is in, your 30s, right?
Right.
So I hope that as NIL continues to evolve, because right now it is a wild, wild west. I think a lot of times it's just like it's an insurance, because a lot of these companies are not using their name, image, and likeness. They are just paying them pay to play, which
Mm.
I think is completely against what NIL was supposed to be. As we evolve and figure out what this looks like, I really hope there's a bigger investment in how to actually get these kids up to speed for
Mm.
their financial success of their futures.
And look, and I just want to like hold on and reiterate the importance of this is why it should be important to all of us. These conversations that these athletes get it, like they're going to be our future leaders. And I don't want to just throw this around cliche. Like if they don't go into the next level, they're the next entrepreneurs. They're the next people entering your workforce. You want a group of people who are, coming out of college, whole centered and feeling fulfilled coming into your workforce and not feeling like, oh, I'm, the lack of confidence that you had, like if something was mishandled and the like. You want these are people who are next, running the next charities, running things locally, and they're doing it now. They're doing a lot of community service work. It's just going to escalate, and that's why it's important for all of us to be having this conversations. Like the adults, those who have been through it, those who are sitting here, it is important because they are like who we're investing in for the next generation. And look, we need them all. So it's important for every brand at every level, these people that are doing NIL deals, to really understand the deal that they're giving these young people and the impact that it's having, and just have some level of responsibility around it.
Yeah, I will say that I was one of those who wasn't taught. You know, I always feel like money was like one of those taboo things you talk about or don't talk about. You don't bring it up. Um, I was different. I actually had a paper route. My dad forced me to get a paper route when I was young and tried doing that in Wisconsin in the dead of winter. It was not a wonderful experience. Um, when I got to high school, he made me get a job again and I worked at Sears. But the tale around me getting a job was I needed to know that money didn't grow on trees, right? It wasn't like, hey, get a job, let's work on your finances. It was like, no, just have a job to understand what it means. So my my growing up in financial was literally like, oh, well, I just work to spend it. Like there's no reason for me to do anything. And it wasn't until I got to the WNBA where I was like, oh gosh, who $34,000? Like, now mind you, this is contracts back then. And that is the rookie minimum. And I'm like, well, how do I live on that now? Now I'm living on my own. I have to get a place to stay. I need a car, like all these things. So I was literally learning in full immersion of trying to figure it all out at the same time wanting to, keep up with the Kardashians per se. And that was before the Kardashians even came. And so I recognized quickly that listen, money goes just as fast as it comes. And I say this in all transparency that it took a long time for me to recognize because, hey, the checks are going to come. I'm going to keep playing. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to keep taking these trips. I'm living my best life. And, you get closer and closer to retirement and you're like, uh-oh,
Mm.
I don't think I've been doing the right thing here. And, it was kind of like a very open, like wide open, like we need to have a discussion, right?
Mhm.
And I think that was around maybe year 8, which, is a lot of wasting, right?
Right.
You try to help your family and then you try to help other people and while you're doing that, it's like nothing's being invested. Nothing is being put away. And year 8, I started to do the right thing, right? I will say this though, the 401k thing probably saved me because I was like, okay, this is money that I'm not even paying attention to, 15%. And WNBA matches up to a certain amount, like just put it away, put it away, put it away. Didn't even think about that money. So I am grateful that at least I made that small decision at a very young age where I can look at my 401k and go, whew, thank God, right? But I didn't start really intentionally planning my future until year 8, where I was like, one day I'm going to have a kid. Well, that costs a lot of money. Well, how much am I going to put away per paycheck to make sure that when that's time, it's already done, right? And
Mhm.
and so I started to do that, and then it was like, you need to have an emergency fund. What kind of emergency? It doesn't matter what kind of emergency. Just have it there so that way, if anything ever comes up, you don't have to stress, right? So it became that. And then, one checking account became, one checking account with 4 savings, right? And then it became, oh, I'm going to invest with this women's company. And, like small little things for me that made me feel more confident in the decisions that I was making. So now when I say I'm broke, it's like, no, I'm just putting all my money into these little buckets and what I got left is what I got left. So if I don't, that's because I'm saving for my future. I'm saving for my family. We are intentionally figuring out what it looks like because, especially now with inflation and we live on the West Coast now. It's a lot different than living
Mhm.
in Kentucky where we were living. Things are a lot more expensive. And, we want to live a good life, but we don't have to keep up with, the world here. And so I will say that I have evolved in my financial literacy in what it takes to really consider your future, but also still do stuff that makes you feel like you are treating yourself in the moment.
And Misty, it's interesting because when we do our financial education sessions, there's a part that we talk about, you are the CEO of you. And like you need to think of yourself as a business. So yes, while you're out there playing on the court or on the grass or turf or whatever you're playing on, like that's one thing. But now you have this other side of like of the business that you need to think about. Like, how are you going to continue to invest in you to grow? And it's not just invest in you like I need to buy a new pair of kicks or whatever. Like, how am I investing in this vision of this business for it to grow? And it's a matter of thinking in some ways, how do you reshape the mindset of people to think about money? And if you think of yourself as a business, oh, you think of yourself, you start thinking a whole different kind of way. And so, it's interesting. And I love seeing what the WNBA players are doing today. Many of them are entrepreneurs. I know that, some have tea companies, food trucks, and all of the other stuff. Is that you get to see a lot of the person clothing lines. You get to see all of that come out, and that's playing out. That's them as a business. Like I'm handling my business on the court, but I'm also handling my business in my personal life, my financial life. And those are the examples that these young college athletes need to see is like, how do you manage it all? And because that's a lot to put on some young people to manage it all. I can't imagine be 17, 18, deals being thrown at you. You still have to go to school, still have to get good grades. You're still being, big brother, big sister, being part of the family, and oh, by the way, you're telling me I got to be the CEO of my business. It's a lot. I think it's a lot and again, I think that's why it's important for us to be there to have these conversations and creating safe space for them to say, I don't know what I don't know, so can you please help me? And I think that that's a very important thing to make sure that they understand.
I think the one thing that I would say, and it's not maybe specified for women, but there's nothing too small that you can't start with. I feel like if you can manage finances when things are strapped and you can figure out how to invest or save small, like it all adds up when you keep being consistent with that behavior. And I think the more consistent you are with those type of behaviors with the little, as you continue to grow in your career and grow in whatever that is, you'll continue that habit throughout your entire career. So I think it's all about, oh, I'll wait until I start making this, or I'll wait until I start to, but by the time that happens, like you could have already been so much further ahead and more, like I said, it's building the same way that you have to build muscle memory on the court, on the pitch, is the same way that you have to build muscle memory with saving, with your spending habits, with being able to say no, right? And saying
Mm-hmm.
no could be something as simple as, no, I'm not going out to dinner with you guys tonight. I've got to work on my CEO business, right? And you have to exercise saying no, because sometimes saying no is hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can I borrow $100, knowing dang well you're not going to get the $100 back, right? So I think that's also a part of the learning is never loan money you're not willing to not get back,
Right.
right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you always, it's an investment. When you loan money, it's an investment knowing that it may not have a return, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's just start young, start small, protect yourself. Protecting yourself meaning like sometimes saying no is protecting yourself. And I think if I would have known those three things earlier, my career would have been a little bit different on how I walked in my financial literacy and how I saved and things like that. And I'm happy that at some point, I had that awareness, but if I can be an example for those that are getting it early and young, like that would be the, hey, do this because I know what it's like to have, and I know what it's like to not have. And so being able to just encourage young, especially young females, we never had the ability to make money the way that you all are making money now. And that's straight up to the WNBA. Like, I think at the pinnacle, I believe it was like $120,000 you could make, like as the top athlete on your team. It has now doubled, which when you look at everybody else, it's not a lot, but it's still double than what it was, and it's growing. So walk into it saying, hey, if the average time span of an athlete is 4 to 5 years, figure out whatever money you're going to make for 4 to 5 years. If you extend it, hey, you out here doing your thing. But if not, figure out how you can take that 4 to 5 years and stretch it and invest where more is coming in while you can figure out what that second career looks like. Because at the end of the day, women have to have a second career. We will retire, and more than likely, we're going to have to start a new one. So I think those are all the things that we as women have to think about. And you figure out, like, while the iron, strike while the iron's hot, but also prepare for what that future looks like when you will have a transition period into whatever that second piece is.
I agree with you. For me, I wish that someone had had that conversation with me about asking the question. Now, I don't know if I would have received it well, but when I was 17 and say, because this is a heady question, like, what are you playing for? Like, what is your why? Where do you end up wanting to go? And I heard a coach speak not too long ago about how he talked to his players and says to them as he's recruiting them, where do you want to go? I want to be in the NFL. So we got to make sure that all the things that you do is leading you that way, whether it's from practicing, showing up, how you show up on and off the field, your media presence, social media presence, everything is trying to get you there. And it's almost like, somebody saying to you when you were 17, 16, or even younger, create your vision board. What do you envision for yourself? I remember hearing a conversation about Issa Rae, who had a vision board, and she had like a whole lot of stuff on it. She accomplished a lot on the vision board. She did it years ago, but she had a random picture of like some rapper or something. She was like, I don't know why he was on my vision board, and nothing happened with us, but he was on her vision board. It was hilarious. But the fact was, she was able to manifest all that stuff because she knew where she wanted to go. She knew what she was playing for, and all of these things were going to help her get there. And so I think that, if anything, and it's not even about the financial piece, because that comes into when you know what you're intentionally planning. Then all things like the saying no, giving you that $100 is not getting me to where I need to go. So I can't give it to you, and you'll be comfortable in that. You won't feel guilty because there's a greater purpose that you're working on. So I think for me, it's like if I was open to it as a younger person and saying, like, what are you playing for? It probably would have been easier to say, Sandra, let's sit and do your vision board. What do you envision for yourself? Because then I would have had fun cutting out things out of a magazine and putting them all over the place and putting Oprah here and this one there and all that other stuff. But I think that that's the important conversation, because then that everything else will then fall into place when you know what you're playing for.
I wanted to ask about, the idea of generational wealth in the Black community, and I know that's a longer conversation probably than the 9 minutes we have left. But I'm curious, Sandra, and your experience and seeing so many different athletes and entertainers kind of go through this learning process of financial literacy. Is that something that there's that awareness of like how, like you said, what are you trying to build? Are we trying to build for the next 20 years, and that's a lot to put on one person. So maybe if it's not, I don't, that's a lot of responsibility. But I'm just curious, if those are conversations too, that you guys are
Mhm.
having or have had?
Of course, and it's like your legacy, and certainly building that generational wealth is a conversation that a lot of people are talking about, and I think not just athletes, entertainers. I think everyone is thinking about, what do I want my legacy to be, and how do I pass on, the values and all of that what I've built to continue in that next generation of my family and those that I in my care and those people that I care about. So these are important conversations, and even just if you think about like how athletes are talking about. I was watching something where they showed like the NBA players watching their kids play in high school and like the proudness of like somebody seeing their kid dunking and all that. So I don't want to drop names because I'm not going to do that. But watching them and do that, like they're so happy about that next generation, that next leg of where they want to. And again, that's not talking about, but that is talking about the wealth in a different way. And I think that that all is encompassed in like I want to see, my son or daughter get to the next level just like I did. But also, I need to make sure I pave the way for that to happen, that there is not a struggle that I may have had to have or my parents had to get me there. Like, I can look, you can use your opportunities to get them into the best camps and all of that, but and the best training. But the best training is going to come from me. I did this. And like I should be as this athlete or entertainer, your best teacher. And so building that generational wealth is definitely the conversation, but it's more about like how do you carry on the legacy overall? And that's what we're having the conversations with everyone. What's your legacy? I think Jay Z has the best song like legacy, legacy, legacy. You see it all over social media when people are posting things. That's an important thing to think about and important conversations to have. What's your legacy?
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is currently where I am in the midst of, right?
Mhm.
Um, so my father, famous, he sang the twist, and I
Wait,
think
hold on. Don't glance over that saying what twist?
a chubby checker. And
Oh,
so
really?
I am his
Oh, that's sad. I said this is a
uh,
twist.
I am his baby. I'm the
Oh.
last of his children, and we grew up in very different eras, shall we say, right?
Mhm.
In one of the things we talk about, when you think of the Black family and you think of generations of things, I always feel like there's been disconnects over different generations for different reasons, right?
Mhm.
And I think about him doing what he did and me being able to do what I did, right?
Yeah.
And then I think about, obviously the continuation of a legacy with my two children and the things that, you talked about in terms of it's not just about finances. It's about how does our entire family level up,
Mhm.
break habits of the past that did not serve us as a family,
Mhm.
recognize that, and do better for the next generation, right? So my husband and I both, we talk about, where our parents, failed per se, as parents, but recognize, it's a generational thing of learning and unlearning and growing in us owning all of that, right? You have to own it. You got to be immersed in it. You've got to forgive. You've got to move
Mhm.
forward, and then you pass on all of those learnings to your children. And, they'll come at us at some point and be like, well, you didn't do this either. It's just natural, right? But it's how do you create and help to mold this new generation in a way that they are emotionally aware, they
Mhm.
are communicative. They know how to communicate in a way that can be well received. How do they operate when they leave this house, right? In full confidence. My husband and I were just talking about it this morning. How can we give them all the armor that they need within this home, which is love? We talk about love, opportunities. You talk about camp, right? Opportunities, education, give them all the keys to what a successful life would be, which would be their armor, so that they can go out into this world and take a couple hits on the chin and still be okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the financial literacy piece of that is teaching them now, right?
Right.
When they go to the store, like, they'll get little thing. Hey, here's your bank. They got the bank in the house right now. Like, do you want to give up that much money for this? Or do you want to wait and maybe something bigger? Maybe you want to go to a camp. So they start to take ownership in the decisions that they want to make. Like, well, maybe that's frivolous spending, right? No, I don't really want the pony. Like, I actually want to do this instead. But teaching them early, so that way they have the full armor of what a life is going to encompass them, and put them out into the world as strong Black men who know what to do, how to act, and how to make it in this world. And that would be my husband and I's legacy on how they go into the world. If they make it in sports, listen, we're going to be right there, just like LeBron and Savannah, all talking. But I will know that they will also be, their bag is going to be full of more than just athletic talent. They will be packed with a power punch of other skill sets that they've learned from infancy. And that's the thing that I think when we look at those athletes that are looking at their next generation, they feel confident because they've done the same thing.
Exactly. And look, we just need to we are in a position to open doors for the next generation, and keep the kicker down so the door don't close. And telling them that they have a responsibility. We now let you in. You need to find others to help them. I remember one year during promotion time, one of my mentors called me and said, this is a glorious day, blah, blah, blah. And it was really great. But of course, he said, but now you have a responsibility. He said, now you are here. It is on you to bring the next generation along. I said, man, can I just enjoy my day without giving me responsibility? But the reality is, like, somebody did it for him. He did it for me. And I mean, clearly, there's a lot of people that did it for me. But in particular, that conversation is just, it's reminding us of that responsibility for those that are coming behind. And it may not even be family. It's just, walking into corporate America, making sure you're not the only Black female, Black male that comes into the room. Like, you're shepherding that next generation in. And you're also shepherding to like function in the room, because you can get in the room and then get kicked out. So learn how to function and to operate and understand, like, the importance of what it means to be in that room and what it means for the next generation that's going to come behind you. And so I think that's, when you think about legacy and all of that stuff, for me, it's that, and I've always said it, like, I hope that somebody just says that I opened the door and the door stayed open. Yeah. And it stayed open for generations to come. And that's an important thing. Man, for me.
Yep. And we stand on the shoulders of giants.
I'm telling you.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And the more that we think of that as individuals, be an enabler to who's next, stop the crab in the bucket mentality, and recognize, like, when you are confident in what you do as an individual, you will have no problem reaching down and pulling somebody else up, because at the end of the day, no one can do it like you, but you're also in a position to help others find themselves, find their dreams, and help them to achieve them as well, because that is also a part of your legacy, is not what you can do for yourself, but how can you do for yourself and then help others accomplish what they want to. So listen, I absolutely adore parody. You might not have been around when I played, but you have been monumental to the shift that I had to go through to become a professional in the corporate world. I went through pretty much, professional development about 2 years ago. So I was only into this role about a year, still struggling with the transition of of being an athlete and, you know, having that kind of schedule to what I do now. But to have that coaching, to have the opportunity to still leverage the brand that I had created on my social media outlets, to have opportunity and to still feel seen after I walked away. I mean, I can honestly say no other company has done that. No one has asked me how can we help you, because it was always the opposite. It was always like, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? But finally, when it was like, well, what can you do for me? I need help right now. Parity was there, you know, that little like subset of income on the side to like post or things like that. It's everything. I still feel connected to my community. I still feel like I'm needed or I'm wanted or that my experiences mattered. And Parity is giving me the ability to show up in different spaces, whether it be a CBD company or talking about financial literacy. I'm more than an athlete. In these experiences that I have, I want to be able to share with so many other athletes because I want to be able to help them on their journeys, right? So those who are just now getting involved with professional sports and they are parity athletes, like I want to be a stepping stone for them to give them advice and give them, and Parity has done that for me. So while I give, I'm receiving at the same time. And so, yeah, spokesperson, Parity, definitely. I I cannot tell you how much, you know, I enjoy doing everything I can for Parity.
So I just want to chime in and say that was a beautiful message, and for us that was the no-brainer for us to be a supporter of parity. And I think exactly what you just said, Misty. Like my experiences mattered, and amplifying your voice, and for us that was amplifying your voice, especially telling those stories about challenges and financial wins and things that they learned. And so we know, again, like I said earlier, people learn from people who were sitting in the seat that they aspire to sit in. And so us being able to be, a sponsor and lending our voice to that campaign really mattered to us, that, we were helping to amplify the voices out there. So saying my experiences matter, it really truly did. And